Hello everyone, welcome back to the FPL Phillips YouTube channel. It's time for my Game Week 4 wildcard video where I'm going to be taking you through my ideal team that I would love to own for the next couple of game weeks, and you guys can make up your mind as to whether you're going to play the chip yourself or whether you already activated the chip. This should be the team for you in my opinion. Before we get into things, if you're new around here, please do make sure to subscribe to the channel. Only around 12% of you watching the video right now are subscribed, so it means a great deal if you choose to do so. Leave a thumbs up on the video as well. All the support recently has been immense, so thank you very much for that if you're choosing to tune into another one of my videos. As with the last couple of vids as well, make sure to leave a comment down below with any of your FPL questions because I managed to respond to every single one on the last few videos, so I'll continue to do so with this one if all things go well. But without any further ado, let's get into talking some FPL. And now before we get into having a look at the draft, I just wanted to quickly go over some of the pros and some of the cons of using the wildcard chip this game week for any of you watching who may be undecided on whether or not you actually want to wildcard in game week 4. And the first pro is obviously if you've got injuries in your team or you've even got players who just aren't playing due to minutes, such as Gabriel, then this is a key pro, is obviously removing them, as you're going to get that pro with any time you use the wildcard, really. And there are some key teams to target and also to remove. I think Brighton are one of the ones whose fixtures really swing around this game week. So if you own Estupinian, then maybe plus another Mitoma or a March in midfield, there could be better options in that position at the moment. And so you can use that as an opportunity because the fixtures are really quite horrendous for Brighton over the next few game weeks. You can get in players from teams like Chelsea who seem to be hitting a little bit of form. They did play Luton last game week, which might be swinging everyone's opinion a little bit too much, but I still think they're going to do well over the next couple of games where they have very favourable fixtures. And the same could be said for Man City. I think a lot of people didn't go with too much Man City at the start of the season because we wanted to quite rightly see how they're lining up, how they're performing, and which assets look the best to target. I think we've got a decent bit of info on that now, and now we can make the call as to whether we want to bring in some of their players. Having the wildcard available means we're able to do that without having to prioritise a Man City transfer in over other positions in our side. You can also load up on some Newcastle players. They have really nice fixtures, especially from game week 5 or 6 onwards. And bringing in them now, even if you're going to bench them for the next couple of game weeks, does seem like it could be a favourable strategy to save a transfer or two down the line, which you can use to jump on maybe a few more short-term picks that are going to produce a high amount of points in a small number of game weeks. And it essentially just saves you that extra transfer, so you've got more flexibility later on to maybe even take a few one-week punts, like you can see at the bottom of this pros list here. You can also change your goalkeeper, so if you've got a Pickford, I know he's got Sheffield United this week, which isn't a bad fixture at all, but if you wanted to load up on someone like the keepers we'll see in my wildcard draft, then you can do that too. And the one-week punt is not only because of the added transfers you're going to get as a result of kind of going early on a few players, but also you could go for a one-week punt this week as well, where I think there are a team who you could go for the one-week punt, and it could look really strong and hopefully play out for you if you do choose to go there. But as with any time you wildcard, there are going to be a few cons, and these are the main ones surrounding a Game Week 4 wildcard, and the main one being that you're wildcarding before an international break, really. Now, these international breaks or periods where there aren't games in FPL, we have like the 2 weeks off, and there are injuries that do happen whilst these players are away on international duty, amongst other things. We've even had players being late back from international duty and having to track their flights to try and see if the players are going to make it back in time to play their club game at the weekend. In this case, it would be, in game week 5. So international breaks tend to throw up a few flags, whether they be red flags or yellow flags or whatever, just a bit of uncertainty. So it is often nice to wildcard on the week of an international break for that reason, and wildcarding a week before it can throw up a few problems if you don't have enough depth in your squad. That's kind of why I think it's less of an issue in this case, because with the way that FPL is shaping up at the moment, we all have quite a lot of funds to distribute and get a very strong 15. So I'd say even if your player gets a minor, less serious injury, then you can just presumably bench them for one game week and not have to play like a 4.0 defender or anything like that you might have had to do other years in FPL. So I think the risk is a little bit more minimised in terms of the international break, but it is still there. The other one you're going to get is that with that kind of spreading of the funds around the squad, there are a lot of benching dilemmas and there's potential for bench points, as you can see in the image that I've put on screen here, when you are benching strong FPL assets. Now, you can look at this in two ways. It can be a very painful thing to experience, of course, having those kind of points down there on the bench week in, week out. But it is also a sign that your squad's doing well. And if you do bench a player with a less strong fixture than someone you've put into your starting 11, or for whatever reason, maybe they're in worse form and they still thrive in perhaps a slightly better fixture, then I think it's still a sign that you've got a strong squad. And whilst it may seem like you've made the wrong decision, overall you have made the right pick, I suppose, to have them in your side. So you can get very unlucky with the benching dilemmas, but I think the strongest strategy this year is going to be to kind of spread the funds around. And that does kind of lead into the point 2 points down, where what about Salah? If you do spread the funds around, it's going to be quite difficult to get the funds together to get back up to him. It's a little bit uncertain at this time, but to be honest, seems unlikely whether he'll move to the Saudi League or not. I personally think he'll be staying at Liverpool this season, and we don't know when Salah will hit that kind of form where he's going to get up to 15, 20 goals in this season, but he will probably do it at some point. It seems to be almost guaranteed with the Egyptian king in recent years. So if you want to get Salah back in, they have some nicer fixtures in a couple game weeks time, then that could be a little bit tricky for you. But I do also think there are other options at Liverpool. You could go for a Luis Diaz at 8 million, even Diogo Jota, Darwin Núñez if he hits form. There are cheaper assets there. So at the moment, I think that Diaz could be a nice alternative to Salah if you do want to go to a Liverpool asset. But we know that over the course of the season, there isn't anyone who performs quite like the Egyptian king in FPL. And leading back up to the third point in this list, Game Week 9 being another opportunity to wildcard. There are quite a lot of fixture swings in this point, and Liverpool are one of the sides who do have a kind of fixture run, along with other teams like Manchester United. Around this point could be a nice time to jump on some of the important fixture swings, and it's also an international break at that point, so you're going to get the benefit of knowing what's happened over that international break as well. So we're going to have 2 international breaks in the space of a relatively short amount of time, which is going to be annoying for us because we want to watch Premier League football, of course, and see and play FPL, so it's going to prevent that. But it also means that there's twice the amount of chance, or weeks, I suppose, for there to be a couple of injuries to your players that you grab in this Game Week 4 wildcard. And then finally, there's no standout template. My wildcard draft will look quite a little bit different to some of the other wildcard drafts that you might have seen, and for good reason. There are a lot of options at the moment who do all look promising, so just do take that with a pinch of salt that there's no standout 11 at the moment. A lot of people have a very different looking 15 and therefore a very different looking 11 as well. So do just take that with a pinch of salt that there is no standout template. It could change quite quickly. Players could hit form, players could fall out of form. There's no set concrete template as strong as we have seen in previous times, which I personally like because it means that people have different teams. Not everyone's going into the same game week with the exact same wildcard draft, which we have seen in the past. And it also means that people do use their chips at different times, and maybe Game Week 4 could be a differential time to use it over something like a Game Week 9 in the future, when I think a lot of people will be. But without that, we're going to get into the wildcard draft now, have a look at the team, and you guys can make up of it what you think, and let me know down below in the comments. So it's that point in the video you've been waiting for then, or alternatively, if you're not weighing up a wildcard, you're probably quite within your rights to skip to this point in the video. So let's get into having a look at the team, shall we? And in goal, I think it's a choice between 2 personally. I've chosen to go on with my Manchester City defensive asset between the sticks for myself. Ederson at 5.6 million, he's not going to get you too many bonus points, he's not going to get you too many save points, but what he will get you are those clean sheet points, which I think we're going to see a lot of for Man City this season. I think in the Sheffield United game, that was the only time we saw a slight glimpse of Ederson at the end of last season, where he was letting in goals late on, costing himself the clean sheet points and ending up on 2 points, or sometimes even 1 point. So it was frustrating for people last season, and I think that's a lot of the reason that people aren't going for him. And there is one other alternative that I really do like as a cheap option too, and that is going to be Flecken of Brentford at 4.5 million. So if you're struggling a little bit for cash, or you'd rather go for a Manchester City outfield defender such as Diaz or Vardiol, these players are looking like they could nail down a spot in the first 11 as much as Pep Roulette allows them to do that. And I also like, and I've kind of mentioned this in a few videos already, that Flecken rotates rather nicely through Game Week 5 with Turner if you have him as the backup keeper. So I would have had Turner as my 4.0 if I'd had Flecken in this side, just to rotate in Game Week 5, because although I'd like to play Areola in Game Week 4, Flecken has a really nice fixture then, so it doesn't really make too much sense. Areola's also that 0.1 more expensive, so I'd have Flecken, Turner, or Edison and Areola, because I do like Areola at the moment. If you've got the 0.1 extra to spend, that could come down to bite you a little bit further down the line. If you're ever priced 0.1 out of a move, then maybe just consider going Turner, because you are going to start Edison the majority of game weeks anyway. So I do like Edison is his expected FPL points per 90, higher than Flecken's, his expected clean sheets per 90, which is kind of what you're investing in Edison for, is thankfully higher than Flecken's. Also, as mentioned, with the saves and the bonus points, you are going to get better off with a 4.5 keeper for a goalkeeper and a slightly weaker defence who's got the more opportunity to make more saves with more shots coming at them. But expected points over the next 3 as well also go in favour of Edison. Now that'll be slightly different if you consider playing Turner over Flecken in game week 5 where Brentford go up against Newcastle. But overall, I still think over the long term, Edison is the one to go for. And I think that having him in goal definitely allows you to be a little bit safer and a little bit less worried about Pep Roulette. Because to be honest, I am. And it also allows me to go for the defensive back 5 that I'm really keen on and that we're going to get into now. And so then let's have a look at the backline and my reasons and justification for doing so. I don't have a Man City defender in here, of course, as I kind of mentioned. I've got Chilwell, I've got Estepinian, which might be a little bit of a differential or I suppose an unpopular call. We've got Udogie, we've got Henry, and then we've got Matty Cash. And I'm not even going to beat around the bush too much. I'm going to get straight into why I like these guys as a 5. They all have their individual selling points, attacking threat from a lot of them. Chilwell, Estepinian, Udogie, Henry, Cash, they all have the potential to get forward and get assists or even goals. That's why I really like all of them. That's the fun way I like to play FPL, is by having defenders who have the capabilities to get up the pitch. Very nice heat maps, and that's why I like all of these 5 on an individual note. The thing I don't like about them all are some of the tough fixtures. So I don't want to play Estepinian against Newcastle or Man United, really. Udogie against Arsenal or Liverpool doesn't look too good on paper. Henry away at Newcastle, again, not one I'd back to start. And Matty Cash, probably over a few of the next few game weeks, is one that I wouldn't really want to target too much. So in that vein, I've put together this kind of rotation planner. I've used the Fantasy Football Fixed Rotation tool to have a look and see what it fancies in terms of who I would start each week. And this is kind of a thing of beauty. I've put together all these bright green fixtures that look like ones I'd be very happy to start players in. The slightly kind of paler green that you can see are ones where you would still start the player, but I think it's a little bit of a more tricky fixture and I wouldn't be over the moon with having to start them. And then also those red ones are the ones where you do bench the player and you can kind of immediately see the caliber of teams that you're able to bench these assets against. So Estepinian, you're benching him over the next 2. You're benching against Liverpool, Newcastle, tough away games like Arsenal, Aston Villa, Chelsea. These are players at the times you don't want to play your defenders really, because there's a very slim chance of coming away with a clean sheet, you would think. And the kind of fixtures that you do get, just in game week 4 alone, you've got Nottingham Forest, Burnley and Bournemouth when you start Chilwell, Udogie and Henry in this game week coming up. And so over the next game weeks, all the way up to game week 12 really, you're very happy with this defence and you may well wildcard in game week 9 or sometime before that. But overall, I'm really happy with how this looks, and I think it looks like almost the ideal defence to own at the moment. The only thing that is kind of putting me off is Cash down at the bottom. You're not really going to start him too happily over the next 4 game weeks, and maybe it would be more worthwhile to go with someone else and just consider bringing him in around the game week 8 or game week 9 mark, where those Aston Villa fixtures really do pick up, and again, could be another reason for going for a wildcard then. And there is another option you could go for kind of as your 5th defender and switch him out and go with someone like a Newcastle defender such as Kieran Trippier. Now, at the time that I'm recording this, there's been a few rumours that Botman's avoided serious injury, but it's still very unclear on the timeline of when he might be back. And I think it would be a big miss to that Newcastle backline if Botman is out injured, so it's definitely something to keep an eye on. But you do have a little few differences in terms of the fixture difficulty. Having to bench someone like a Chilwell a little bit more often is probably not something you're going to want to do with how attacking he is playing. But yeah, I still really like the look of this as well. You still bench whichever player you bring in game week 4, obviously, but you get to play your Newcastle defender a little bit more often. Obviously, Trippier is quite a bit more expensive than Matty Cash. That is something definitely worth considering. And so if you're benching him over the next 2, maybe it's worth just having someone cheaper in anyway, and being able and willing to commit a transfer further down the line to bring in your Newcastle defender of choice, whoever that ends up being. Most likely Trippier in a lot of cases, I think it will be for us. But overall, I think these both offer really nice rotation strategies. I'll just go back to the other one. This is my favourite, and it's the one that I've put in the draft. Let me know what you guys think. Would you be willing to commit to a strategy like this, where you're kind of saved from having to make any transfers in defence, barring injury? You also have other options that you could go for from the different clubs. Say if Henry gets injured, you could easily make the switch over to Pinnock. I really like this defence for this reason, and it allows you to kind of have your transfers focus with Ederson in goal, who you're not going to have to transfer. You can focus them on your midfield and on your attack and trying to jump on the fixtures as they come for some of the attackers. And that's what's allowed me to kind of commit a transfer even to game week 5 by taking a 1-week punt in the midfield. And that 1-week punt I'm going for, if you have looked at the fixtures this week and who is playing Luton, then you're able to guess. It's of course a West Ham player, and I've gone with Jarrod Bowen in the midfield. And now immediately, when you look at this midfield, you might think it's missing some key assets. Saka and Bruno Fernandes basically are the two that I've had to sacrifice to go with this midfield, but I just do really like the look of it. I think so many people are considering transferring in Sterling, Maddison, Foden this week. Well, I can get them all in with this draft. And Mbeumo as well is kind of one you have to have in, and of course is on penalties himself. And then finally, Jarrod Bowen would be the one who comes in basically just for 1 week. And then hopefully you've got the funds to be able to upgrade to a Bruno Fernandes or a Saka in the future. And now that is something to definitely consider, is that I would only want Bowen for this 1 week basically. You take a punt on him, or you could go for someone like a Ward-Prowse even, but then use the 1 free transfer and commit to doing that to take out Bowen next week, because I don't think there's too much of a risk. I know that's an international break, as mentioned, and that does tend to sometimes throw up a few unforeseen injuries and whatnot, but if worse does come to worse, you really can bench Bowen next week or something like that, and then you don't have too much of a problem to solve either. So I like the little bit of a risk of taking it on Bowen this week. You could go for whichever West Ham midfielder that you fancy, whether that be Ben Rama, James Ward-Prowse, even Paqueta, you could go for. Alternatively, I think the plus with going for someone like a Ward-Prowse or a Ben Rama is that you kind of have a more chance of getting a penalty kick with them, whereas Bowen doesn't look like he'll be on them based on what we've seen last season and the calibre of penalty taker coming into the club. But that's kind of why I've gone with it. I've sacrificed going with Saka and Bruno kind of on a 1 week basis and then bringing in one of them, hopefully, for Bowen next week. But it is something to consider that a lot of people have different team values at the moment, different amounts of cash in the bank. There were a few price rises last night with this team as well, which has made it more expensive. So if you hadn't already activated the wildcard and gotten a lot of these assets in, you might have missed out on a bit of team value there. And you do need to consider how much you have in the bank to be able to afford that plus 1.5 mil or whatever you need to get back to one of those more expensive assets like a Bruno or Saka, who are penalty takers for their sides. And I would probably prioritize Bruno at this point, maybe. Maybe you can have them both back in a couple game weeks, but I like the kind of risk element. I don't think Saka's data is brilliant, and you kind of are going for him a lot based on the penalties, but it's a difficult thing to say because a lot of people will be owning Saka quite rightly at the moment, and it could come back to bite you, so it is a little bit of a risk going with this midfield, but I like it, and I think it looks very, very fun indeed. And then finally, up front, we've got some strikers that do have a little bit more funds allocated to them as well, which is an area where you could choose to downgrade. We've got Erling Haaland, who of course is going nowhere. We've got Nicholas Jackson, who I think has to be in there for that optimal triple up of Chilwell, Sterling and Jackson. And then finally, we've got Ollie Watkins, who I think is the one who would have to make way if you're struggling for a little bit of funds. I think you could quite easily downgrade to Alvarez, have him in instead. And although the rotation might not look as nice, I think that it doesn't really matter too much. And Alvarez and Foden both look fantastic at the moment, which does, of course, mean sacrificing Ederson in goal because we have Foden and Haaland already. You can only have 3 Man City assets. You could do Ederson to Flecken, Watkins to Alvarez, save quite a bit of funds. I know you're doubling up on going with the Henry and the Flecken at the defence in times, but I think that Brentford have looked solid and hopefully should continue to keep a few more clean sheets in the future. The only goal they conceded to Palace was a rather freak goal, and I don't think they're going to happen on occurrence every week. So I'd be quite happy to have Flecken and Turner in goal, then go Alvarez up front for Watkins as your third Man City asset, and then be able to have those extra funds to, upgrade in midfield and make sure you have those funds available to get in a Bruno Fernandes or a Saka next week and still have a very, very strong looking front 8. I think there are a few other things worth considering in terms of the midfield, is that United have Arsenal and Brighton next, so you don't necessarily need to bring in Bruno Fernandes just next week. I think you could alternatively wait 2 weeks. Now, Brighton have failed to keep a clean sheet over the first 3 game weeks, which is something that makes me think maybe you would want an United attacking asset for that game. And I think Bruno Fernandes, out of the 2, is that one that you want to go for. And so with those transfers that you're going to have to burn, you've got the flexibility to be able to use them on Bowen, on whichever kind of front 8 player ends up not performing. You can go for whoever because you've got that defense that rotates so well. And overall, I'm probably just repeating myself now, but I really like that as a selling point and an appealing factor of this draft. So let me know what you guys thought of it down below. Make sure to subscribe if you are new to the channel, and make sure to leave a thumbs up on the video as well if you did enjoy it. That would really help me out and be greatly appreciated. Leave a comment down below, as I mentioned at the start of the video, with your own FPL questions and queries. And as always, I'll try to get back to every single comment down below as quick as I can. If you want to get some more one-to-one interaction with myself, ideally, and then also get some other perks as well, you can choose to join the members club via the link down below in the description, or you can hit the join button alternatively, or you can join our free Discord community via the link in the description as well. I'm sure you've seen the carousel or the slideshow going down below. Believe me, that's representing that you should do that as well. So yeah, thank you very much for tuning into the video. I hope you have a good rest of your Tuesday or whatever day you are watching this on, and I hope to catch you guys in the next video, where hopefully I'll see you then. Goodbye.